Joining us now is Phil Luck, the Economics Program Director at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. He was Deputy Chief Economist for the State Department in the Biden administration. Phil, great to have you with us. First, I want to talk about a little bit about the strategic thinking about quantum, and it's great to make that sort of investment in quantum, but there's a whole lot behind it to make sure that that investment can actually come to fruition in terms of advances in computing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's really good both economic and strategic reasons for the government to be investing in quantum technology. Quantum computing and quantum encryption is going to be really important in the decades ahead. But, you know, this is a technology that's not ready for market. So this is a type situation where, you know, this is a situation where R&D, investments in workforce, really basic things are really where I think the government should be thinking about spending its money.
Yeah, so not just plunking money into an equity stake. In other words, there's a lot that goes behind it as well. When you're thinking about how the government has been viewing what is strategic and how they're going after equity stakes, what comes to mind in terms of what could next be on the list?
So, I mean, they've been in some ways looking at a pretty similar list to the last administration, which is looking out at the sort of landscape of technologies, seeing ones where we need these technologies for sort of our own health, biotech and things like that are a good example, or things where, you know, they proliferate through our technology. Semiconductors is a great technology, is a great example. Rare earths and critical minerals just everywhere and everything we use. Quantum is a different case where, you know, this is going to be in some sense a sea change in how we do computing and what we can and can't see. I mean, just in real layman's terms, because I'm just an economist, not a scientist here, you know, our methods of encryption are really at risk if we get quantum or our adversaries get quantum. So then we'll need a new type of encryption. So things like that, and again, for the economic arguments, you know, there's a lot of different reasons why you would want to make sure you can sort of keep a lead here.
You know, Phil, the most important commodity in the world, people will say, is crude oil, but I actually think, and Tim might agree with me, it's copper. And, you know, there's going to be some security risks around copper and the availability of copper. Is that something that you're thinking about?
Absolutely. Oh, I'd say two things. You were exactly right. I mean, copper is incredibly important. If you want to, you know, modernize our grid, if you want a grid that can support data center build out and sort of the type of compute that we're going to need, you're going to need a heck of a lot of copper. But at the end of the day, copper is a commodity. It's pretty freely traded and it's not overly concentrated. What I would say is probably the most important commodity, especially for things like quantum and other technologies, is talent. This is people. You know, we have basically for every three jobs in quantum, we have basically one homegrown person to fill those jobs. So if we want to take the lead in these areas, if we want to build fabs, if we want to advance in quantum, if we want to build ships, we need people with specific skills.
Phil, not a political question at all. What do you think about the government taking stakes in companies at this point? This seems different than other administrations. Let's talk about it purely from the strategic sense, if that's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, entirely apolitically, I don't think it's the best way to do this, honestly. You know, I think the market, we have an incredibly deep capital market. I think the market's very good at figuring out, you know, where to put capital and where to invest in equity. I think what government does well, what government should focus on doing is solve the problems that markets don't solve, which is investing in R&D that has these really big spillovers, making sure that we're investing in things that have really big strategic implications. Markets aren't great at like pricing in national security. So, you know, I think to me, it can work. If you throw enough money at things, it can work. It just doesn't seem like the best way to achieve the goal we're trying to achieve.